And I am back again from another uncharacteristically long hiatus, I hope. And as it's December, the time of Christmas, I've decided to look at a Christmas movie. In the same vein that Die Hard and Batman Returns are Christmas movies, which would be Lethal Weapon. Released in '87, directed by Richard Donner, the same guy who a decade earlier had actually given us Superman the movie. So that kind of tells you the kind of quality you're working with going into this one. Because if he could make us believe that a man could fly, what can he manage to do with two completely polar opposite characters having to work together? That's something we've gotten so much of, especially since then. And that's pretty much kind of the plot of the movie, really, is two very opposite cops having to work together to solve a case. One is a family man, happy, suburban household, all that. Your very generic apple pie life. The other one is not any of that currently. And I think that is one of the weird, it's the peanut butter and chocolate concept, I guess. Is they're good apart. Like you can do good movies with both these type of characters being your protagonist. So mixing them together and seeing how they kind of bounce off each other kind of adds a really fun flavor to it. And a lot of what really helps in this movie is the casting of Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. You can any movie you can always say if your leads don't click, your movie is fighting an uphill battle from day one. And these two absolutely click together. Like they work perfect. Which should be kind of obvious for anybody who knows that there are three sequels to this movie and a TV spinoff, and potentially a fifth one on the way. And so let's kind of take a look at this one. Again, uh, Glover plays Roger Murtaugh. Three kids, wife, two cars, boat, absolute apple pie life. Yet, it's a dime a dozen. Like, you could transplant this family anywhere in America and they still work. And when we meet him, it's his 50th birthday. They're wishing him happy birthday in the tub. You know, very family happy, all that. And then he's heading out to work. His kids are late for school. His older daughter is late teenager, probably right around 18. I don't think it's ever specified, but she's definitely late high school or fresh out, right in there. You know, everything's hunky dory, and then old message from an old war buddy, a guy he never talks about, which is always a good sign for anybody who's ever seen a movie where a character has somebody in his past from the military he's never mentioned. That's always good. They never have anything to do with the plot. Spoilers for a 30-year-old movie. And then we bounce to Martin Riggs, played by Mel Gibson, who lives on the beach in a little trailer, wakes up with a half burned out smoke in his mouth, naked, as you do. I mean, it's '87. If I look like Mel Gibson in '87, I wouldn't wear pants. Mm-mm. And instantly, right to a Coors. Like he does not care. This is a guy who very few words, does not care. He is the grumpiest of Gus's, and we definitely get to see that as he's about to head out to work. And I should specify, I'm kind of reviewing the director's cut. I grew up mostly watching just the theatrical cut, but there are a couple of scenes added to the director's cut that I think are kind of important. Some of them make sense why they were cut, some of them don't. This one I don't think does, because as he's heading out the door, TV's on, commercial, all that, and he just gets pissed off and chucks a beer through it. Shatters the TV. Like, there's still a beer bottle in it. And then he picks up the picture that was on top of it that he knocked off, which was a wedding picture of him and his now deceased wife, Vicky, who we come to find out was killed in an automobile accident. And he's still getting over that. And her death spiraled him. He's done. He doesn't care anymore. He is right on the edge of, if somebody takes him out, he's fine with it, or he'll do it himself. That's where he's at, which we get in the next couple of scenes. Almost an introduction scene that's also in the director's cut that's kind of pointless. They did cut it out very specifically because it doesn't serve too much of a point. There's a active sniper at a school. He shows up. What's going on? Guys shooting at kids. All right, SWAT on the way. Yep, okay, bye. And as he's leaving, they're carrying a kid by. And you see this turn. Like, he's fine letting it be. You know, there's SWAT's on the way. They're going to know what to do. But when the kid goes by, he's done. Like, you see that turn. He's just like, okay. And he asks, are they random? What's he doing? And yeah, it just seems like he's a crazy. So he just pulls his gun and walks out there right in the open, trying to call the guy out. And the guy pops off a couple of shots, misses, and then Riggs just empties a clip into him. Just from a distance, sun, shielding, all of that. So it does specify that he is a good shot, which we didn't really need. There is a scene later on between him and Roger that points out that he is a very good shot. And there's another scene even later on in the movie that proves he's an exceptionally good shot. And then he goes on a drug bust. There's a fight ensues. He shoots a couple of guys. He gets held at gunpoint, hostage style. And he's telling the guy, just shoot me, just shoot me, just shoot me, just do it, just do it, just do it. Finally just headbutts the guy and he's just pissed. He is just rage-filled. And that's when he gets reassigned to work with Roger, who's now working a apparent suicide. Looks like a jumper. Woman jumped off out of an apartment window. Splat. You know, it's one of those sad things. Until he realizes that name Hunsaker is that this girl who fell is the daughter of his old war buddy. And so he, all right, that's kind of coincidental. Let's find out. Well, then he gets introduced to Riggs. They don't click at all because, as Riggs points out to him, here's how this works. Everybody thinks I'm trying to draw a psycho pension and I'm faking being crazy, in which case nobody wants to work with me. Or I'm actually crazy, in which case nobody wants to work with me. I don't want to work with you. You don't want to work with me. We're both screwed. Deal with it. And Roger is not okay with it. And so they go on about their merry day until they get to a jumper. Another jumper building, suit. The kind of thing you see a lot, especially in movies. They love the fancy guy in a suit, done with work, gonna jump. Well, Riggs goes up there. His idea being, well, it's technically not a murder yet until he jumps. So let's just kind of get preemptive on this. Goes up there and he's trying to talk the guy down. Like, oh, I'm afraid of heights. Let's just be cool. No, let's stay up here and have a smoke. Maybe we'll get lucky and die of cancer. Well, he finally snaps some cuffs on the guy and himself, so he can jump. And then the guy threatens to jump, and Riggs just tells him, "All right, let's go." And they go over. One thing, it's obviously a safety thing, but I think everybody's noticed that when they go off the ledge, you see the handcuffs break and they have to hold hands on the way down. Obviously, it's a safety thing. These days, you could probably get around it with a little bit of CGI. So, it's thin, but it is something that once you see it, you see it. So, sorry I got to nitpick that, but it's kind of part of the deal. Which, once they get to the ground safely, thanks to a really awesome airbag, Murtaugh and Riggs have it out. Like, Murtaugh pulls him into an abandoned building and just screams at him, "What are you doing? Are you actually crazy? You're trying to kill yourself?" And he just takes out his gun and tells him, "Do it. Just, here you go. Pull the trigger. Pull the trigger. Do it." And one scene I did forget to mention that was in the theatrical was the night between Riggs' drug bust and meeting Roger. He's sitting in his little trailer and he's got his gun and he loads it, rubs the prints off. He's ready. He's gonna do it, but he can't bring himself to do it. He can go right up to that line, and he just can't. That's what he mentions to Roger, and they're sitting together. Is, I'm not afraid to do it. I can't get over that line. It's that line he can't get over. But during his argument with Roger, he's willing to go over that line. He does pull the trigger, but Roger grabs the gun, and thanks to it being I believe it was a .38 revolver, the hammer gets caught on Roger's thumb, so it doesn't click. So the gun doesn't go off. Roger's, oh God, he is crazy. And so they start looking around. Come to find out, the girl had drugs in her system, but they were laced with chemicals that would have killed her whether she jumped or not. So now it's a murder, and at the very least, an attempted murder. So they got to go look for that. And they're digging around. They find the guy who was paying for the apartment. They go to his place. Thankfully, they're invited in. They're plainclothes cops, so almost makes sense, especially once they get inside and find out there's a shitload of cocaine. Just saying, I got no idea about drugs or anything, but I'm pretty sure that anybody dealing in cocaine generally doesn't wear a cop uniform. They just look like everybody else. So, alright. They get there and guy takes a shot at him. Roger shoots him in the leg and has a bit of a see what happens. You can just shoot him in the leg and they can still answer questions. Dig it, Riggs. Until the guy ends up pulling a second gun. Riggs saves Roger, ends up killing the guy. And Roger's pissed at him, yeah, you shot him, great job, good for you. Until later on, he calms down and, does apologize and thanks Martin for saving his life. And then ends up taking Riggs home for dinner. And one thing I did notice on this specific watch through, because I was smart enough to actually pay attention to it, was watching Mel Gibson's eyes. He doesn't say anything through really the entire dinner scene. Very few words, very few, maybe 8 lines total. But you watch his face, like he scans the house, and it's he almost seems uncomfortable in it. Like this isn't something he's used to, which makes a lot of sense now with his life really being completely turned upside down. And it's almost this, I almost want to say an adopted puppy feeling to him. And, home life, Roger's got, again, the perfect home life. And they get to talking afterwards. And Roger's like, hey, he tried to kill her. Maybe she saw something, said something, whatever. Tried to kill her. She jumped. He's dead. It's done. Whereas Riggs is much more, I don't like it. That just seems too clean. It seems too weird. And so as they're leaving, Roger tells him, if you don't kill me or yourself tomorrow, I'll start trusting you. And Riggs admits it was killing people was the only thing he was ever good at. In the war, Vietnam, that both characters ended up serving in. Riggs mentions, I killed a guy at 1,000 yards. That's very impressive. And he, even at especially at 19. And it seems a little weird. I can chalk it up to Riggs is just kind of uncomfortable in the family setting, so he's a little more off kilter than he usually would be. But it also kind of sets up the third act a little bit. So I can kind of let that slide. The next day, Riggs shows up, wakes Roger up, and tells him, hey, who was the one who saw her jump? Well, it was this prostitute. Here's her name, right, all that. And they're like, all right, so there's something fishy. Well, they go to the shooting range that morning, and Roger's a good shot. Target right between the eyes. Riggs takes his turn with the same target, still got the hole in it, and he takes all the way back to the end of the range, pulls his, fires 7 shots, brings the target back up. It's a long scene, but it does point out that Roger's a good shot. Like, it takes him a second to line it up right, but he is a very good shot. But Riggs is better. He fires off 7 shots and turns that center shot that Roger put into it into the nose of a smiley face, which is really, again, it's a nice little thing that kind of adds to the third act. Like, okay, he's a good shot. He's got this. Well, they go looking for the girl. Her house explodes. And just gone. The very perfect 90s house explosion, mind you. Well, they talk to a couple of kids who were playing around, and they find out that somebody planted an explosive who had a Special Forces tattoo, the same kind Riggs has. And now everything comes to light. They go to check with Roger's old friend, who reveals, I was part of a covert mercenary group in Vietnam, and we started smuggling out heroin, and because I work in banking, I make it all look good, launder the money, everything's clean. Well, then the bad guys show up and pop him and take off in a helicopter. And this is where I kind of got to talk about the bad guys. Really, the one I remember the most is Gary Busey as Mr. Joshua. And this is the movie that he is credited most for helping kind of revive his career, because it was dwindling in the mid '80s. So that's pretty cool. Andy, I think he does a really fantastic job. Very quiet, just there as a presence, and sells it all the way. Well, now they know something's up. They start looking into it, and Mr. Joshua swings by and shoots Riggs with a shotgun, but luckily he's wearing a vest, he's good. And they're like, hey, we got a leg up now, we got something. It's not much, but we got something. They think you're dead. Maybe we can work with it. Which is when a call comes in. Roger's oldest daughter's boyfriend is dead, 2 blocks from his house. And they race over, and she's gone. They took her. And phone rings. Roger picks it up. We've got your daughter. Stay by the phone. We're going to call you with instructions. And hangs up. And this is where I got to talk about my favorite scene in the movie. For one really interesting reason. Inside, and Riggs and Murtaugh are sitting down. And Riggs tells them they're not going to let her go. If you hand yourself over to them, you'll both be dead. Roger agrees. If you want to get her back, you're going to have to do it my way. Roger agrees. And Riggs tells him, if we go in, we got to go in hard. We can't screw up. We can't miss. If you're going to shoot, you got to shoot to finish it. And Roger asks him, are you really as good as you say, or are you just crazy? And Riggs kind of takes a minute and says, you have to trust me. And the one thing that I really think works for this is not a lot of camera movement. The camera comes in on the two of them talking and then cuts to singles on their faces, bouncing back and forth. But the one thing that sticks out to me the most is that Riggs ultimately has no stake in this. Not his family. They think he's dead. He can walk away. And then on the other side of this, Roger never asks. We never see him asking for help. It is just they took your daughter. We're going to do this. You don't ask me. I don't have to say it. We're going to do this together. And I think this is the moment where they really perfectly gelled together. The previous dinner scene was where the two characters finally started swirling, and this is where they meld into a beautiful Reese's cup of awesome. Phone rings, go to the desert, yeah. Riggs bails out of the car, rifle, girl, standoff, shots are fired. Unfortunately, Riggs gets caught. Murtaugh gets caught and shot in the arm. They recapture his daughter. And now it's torture time. Riggs takes electric shock therapy to the body. And Murtaugh just gets hammered on. Riggs manages to escape. Helps get Roger out and his daughter. Rianne. Thank you. They get out. Joshua takes off. General McAllister, the guy in charge, he takes off. Roger manages to stop McAllister, who either the car explodes from a fire or he pulls the pin on a grenade. It could go either way. It's mildly ambiguous. Unfortunately, Mr. Joshua gets away. Riggs tries to follow him, doesn't work. They regroup and take off because they obviously know Joshua's heading for Murtaugh's house. And then he does. He kills the 2 cops out front and drives the car right straight. No, he doesn't. Riggs does, to keep Joshua busy after he goes in guns blazing. And they get him out on the lawn, and it's, all right, we're going to hash this out. We're done. You shot me with a shotgun. This time it's personal. And Riggs and Joshua end up fist fighting on Murtaugh's lawn. Cops everywhere. And I don't hate it. I'll admit it. It feels a little long for a fist fight. I've never been in one. And one thing that doesn't help is the terrible white shoes that Mel Gibson had to wear for this scene. It's bad. I don't like it. And I love this movie, but that is probably the one pin I will put in there and say, this part I hate. I don't like it. It's bad. And I will die on this hill. But beats the crap out of him. He's being arrested. And then Mr. Joshua tries to escape. Riggs and Murtaugh shoot him. He's dead. So everything's good. Riggs visits his wife's grave. I believe he leaves flowers. Goes to the Murtaugh house that's kind of all plasticed up because somebody drove a car through their window. And he hands over a bullet with a little ribbon on it. A hollow point that Riggs had pointed out to Roger earlier that this was going to be the bullet he was going to use to kill himself with. And he tells her, "Here, this is for your dad. Tell him I don't need it anymore. He'll understand." And he turns and he leaves. Merry Christmas, and leaves. Well, Roger comes around out like, you're out of your damn mind. We went through all of that, and you're gonna leave me to eat the worst Christmas turkey? No, you ain't. You're not playing that game. Get in here. And Riggs tells him, "I'll tell you a secret. I'm not crazy." Just this really nice buddy moment that he's grown. He's come out of this dark spiral he was in thanks to Roger. And come on in. Let's do all this. And then Riggs asks, "Can I bring a friend?" Yeah, and here comes his dog. It's like, all right, let's do this. And of course, we get the classic for the franchise line, "I'm too old for this." So that's kind of nice. Of course, I've already seen all 4 movies. So now looking back on it from the end of 4 to this, it's kind of beautiful. But how does this one kind of stack up? And I gotta say, it stacks up very well. It's definitely one of my easily top 1,000 movies. Like, I got a lot, and to say that I would pick it quite a few times out of most movies behind me says a lot. Even 35 years later, it still holds up damn well. And a lot of that does help with both the directing from Richard Donner and the script by Shane Black. Now, it should be noted that his original script was way darker, and that from what I understand, that kind of seems to be the way he works, is he makes really dark scripts, and then during pre-production script rewriting, they kind of lighten it up a little bit. And yeah, I've got thoughts on Shane Black, but I will absolutely agree. I think he is one of the best script writers out there, and has been for decades now. And this movie, solid. The action's good. The humor is pretty spot on. There are a couple of moments that I don't think have aged particularly well, especially for the 2020s. But that's, you can pretty much say that about any movie that's over a decade old. The zeitgeist changes. You can't really help anything there, but other than that, it's very solid. Is it perfect? No. Again, I'll die on that hill. I will forever hate those shoes because I cannot unsee them. The handcuff thing is like, come on, but like, all right, I get it. I can make an excuse for that. The shoes, I can't. If they would have been pink, I'd have felt a lot better about it. That's just me, unfortunately. There are probably some people who've never even noticed it and can just actually enjoy it. But the story fits together pretty well. Nice detective story. All backed by wonderful characters. Great chemistry from the leads. Spectacular. And that's really the backbone of this entire franchise, is these two guys absolutely working off each other spectacularly. And I think definitely without them and the solid script, the good action, the good humor, all that, this probably wouldn't have done as well. We definitely wouldn't have gotten 4. We might have gotten the 2. Just the first 2. But where do I have to put this one? I'd probably have to give it a 4 out of 5. Again, it's the minor details that kind of stick with me. Not everything, all the new scenes for the director's cut you really need. Like, there's a scene after he leaves Roger's house after the dinner where he stops off and picks up a prostitute to go home. It's kind of implied that he just kind of wants somebody there so he doesn't feel alone, just to kind of keep himself afloat. I'm sure there are some people who could look at it like, oh, he's just picking up a prostitute, potentially underage, because he does ask, and she does say she is. So you just kind of didn't really need that. Also, the sniper scene at the beginning, you didn't really need that. So, yeah. If you want to watch it, I do say the director's cut's probably a little better, just for a handful of bits. But theatrical cut's still pretty damn good. Solid. So, Lethal Weapon, 4 out of 5. It's not my favorite of the franchise, probably. I'll get into that one next time when I review, of course, the sequel, and the sequel, and the sequel. Yeah, that's right. So, I've been Rob. Take it easy.